Welcome back. A new poll is offering an intriguing glimpse into the state of play in the Maryland Senate race. Of the two candidates now in the race for the Democratic nomination, Congresswoman Donna Edwards leads fellow Democrat Chris Van Hollen by about 10 points. But the survey finds that things get upended if Congressman Elijah Cummings of Baltimore joins the fray. Josh Kurtz writes a column for Center Maryland. He's covered state politics a long time, and he does it as well as anybody. He joins us now. Great to have you here. Thanks very much for coming.
Great to be here, Bruce.
Washington Post, University of Maryland survey. They were in the field about plus or minus October 10th for a 3-4 day window. Fascinating poll. Let's look at the head-to-head. If it's Edwards and Van Hollen, two Washington area lawmakers who've served for a long time and who have a persona that is fairly well established, she's doing really well, perhaps in a surprise fashion.
I wasn't that surprised, but she's up about 10 points. I think it was 38-28, but obviously a very big undecided pool at the moment. I think there are a few things going on here. One is just demographics, and this is kind of what Congresswoman Edwards has been counting on all along. At least 40% of the Democratic electorate is going to be African American. She's black. Perhaps 60% of the Democratic electorate in a primary is going to be women. So she gets a boost, I think, from those two demographics, and particularly when she's trying to succeed a trailblazer in Barbara Mikulski. So there's that going on. I don't know if you want to get into this now, but the sort of opposing factor is the fundraising, and Congressman Van Hollen is doing a lot better on that front.
He's done a tremendous job fundraising, and he's hoovered up many key endorsements that typically carry weight.
Right.
So far, they're not translating. As you mentioned, in the Washington Post University of Maryland survey that was just done, Donna Edwards is the choice of 38% of those surveyed, Chris Van Hollen 28%, with a large, 1 in 4 voters is somewhere outside that mix. Either they identified someone else, they didn't identify anyone at all, or they expressed no opinion. And this is from WashingtonPost.com. The blue line at the top there, that's Donna Edwards, 38%, Chris Van Hollen 10 points back. 24% still in play, meaning this race has a long way to go.
Absolutely. And, let's face it, these guys, I don't think they're ever as well known as we insiders think they are. And they're both D.C. area folks in particular, so my guess is that they're just considerably less well known up in the Baltimore area, and that's probably where a significant portion of the undecideds are.
Speaking of the Baltimore area, this race gets upended if a long-serving, popular, charismatic member of the U.S. House, congressman and former man we covered when we were in Annapolis covering the Maryland General Assembly, Elijah Cummings, who was a leader in the legislature back during his time there, if he gets in, it's a whole different kettle of fish.
It is. That Post poll found him with 33% of the vote, and I think Van Hollen and Edwards then both came in with 20%. I think a few things are going on here, Bruce. One is he's just obviously much better known in Baltimore, and not only is he better known, he is really nearly a beloved figure these days. During the riots in April after the Freddie Gray case, he was both kind of validated the community's outrage. He also called for peace. And
he was a real presence.
And he was a presence in the streets. And, he really sort of very passionately articulated the community's needs and desires. So I think his numbers are probably sky high in Baltimore, but he's also pretty well known in the D.C. area because he's such a pivotal figure in Congress. You were just talking to Mike DeBonis about the Benghazi committee. He's the top Democrat on that committee. If you're a partisan Democrat, you're really appreciating the job he's doing, kind of pushing back against what you perceive as being sort of Republican excess. He's played the same role as the top Democrat on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, where there have really been some zealot Republican chairman, trying to embarrass the Obama administration at every turn.
And if the Democratic primary becomes a three-way race, and we'll talk in a second about what might get Cummings into the race and what might keep him out, geography becomes an issue. Do you want to pick up on that?
I think so. Even though nowadays more voters are in the D.C. area, a lot of people think the Baltimore region will play a pivotal role. I think about a quarter of the primary voters are there. And again, I think, Cummings would just have overwhelming advantages there, and
arguably Van Hollen and Edwards would be
cancel each other out.
Would be fighting for the areas where they're best known.
Right.
Cummings with the big Baltimore media market, he's on TV, he's so well known.
Exactly.
There. No surprise that he would be doing very well if he gets in. Does he get in?
Flip a coin. I'm just not sure. He's basically said he's going to wait till after the dust settles from these Benghazi hearings, and then he'll take a look at it. He has the luxury of some time. He doesn't have a ton of time. He actually has more money in the bank than Congresswoman Edwards right now, but he doesn't have a ton, and he would have to really ramp up his fundraising and political operations if he gets in. He's really, since he was first elected to the House in 1996, he hasn't had to run a very competitive race. Both Van Hollen and Edwards have more recently, and so, you know, it would take him a while to crank up a political operation, no matter how popular he is.
It's always the decision, it's always a conundrum for folks who've risen in the House. Do I stay on the track I'm on? Because we know that there's disproportionate influence, and that is putting it, that's the understatement of all time. The longer you're there and the higher you ascend, you have much more influence, particularly in a large body like the House with 435 members. So would you rather be a powerful person in a large body, or start as a backbencher in the 100-person Senate and maybe or maybe not become something?
I'm sure that's a huge part of his thinking, you know, just where can he have the most influence. He has said publicly, you know, I really want to dedicate myself to helping my community, which is Baltimore, you know, pick up the pieces from this tumultuous year that it's had. You know, can he do that better in a House district, or, you know, in a Senate district? Obviously, he'd have the whole state to worry about. So it's a conundrum.
For Donna Edwards, she's kind of creating her own playbook here a little bit. Often, when women candidates run, they say, "Don't vote for me because I'm a woman. Vote for me because I'm the best candidate." I hear Donna Edwards saying, "Vote for me, A, because of who I am, because of my background prior to getting in, the issues I've advocated since being in, and the fact that there are no black women in I'm overstating slightly, but she's hitting the nail directly on the head.
Absolutely.
There are no black women in the Senate, and it's time we had one.
Yeah. I was fascinated to see her public campaign schedule just this past Saturday. 3 events, all to African-American women's groups. I mean, that says it all right there, I think.
And for Cummings, the issue of late start, fundraising, having to ramp up fundraising, he risks his House seat, and that's something all 3 of these seats, if Cummings gets in, we'll have at a minimum 3 new members of Congress next time, because the dominoes will, the process will begin where Van Hollen leaves, race for his seat. Edwards leaves, race for her seat. Cummings leaves, then there's a race for his seat. So this is one of those moments that you sometimes get in Maryland politics, all, of course, started by Barbara Mikulski's decision to retire.
And I think that was actually in the back of her mind when she decided to retire, you know, just time to get some fresh blood and churn things up a bit.
A memo that has not reached the desk of
many others.
Thomas V. Mike Miller, the long-serving and widely regarded president of the Maryland Senate. Talk about the interesting drama that just played out in Montgomery County regarding early voting locations. That really caught fire.
That was a sleeper,
and has just been resolved in terms of them deciding we're going to say yes to all the possible early voting locations.
Well, one of the unknown, unintended consequences of this past election is that with a Republican governor now, all the county boards of elections have Republican majorities. So the Montgomery County Board of Elections moved to close 2 early voting sites in Democratic areas and proposed opening 2 in more rural Republican areas. Well, the Democratic establishment in Montgomery County went nuts. They complained. The State Board of Elections basically overturned the county board, and I guess it was just yesterday the county board voted a sort of compromise deal where they're going to keep the 2 that they had originally planned to close, one in Chevy Chase and one in Burtonsville, and they will open a new one in Potomac, I believe. So, you know, a happy ending, I guess, but, you know, just kind of a crazy, unintended political fight.
It gave Democrats a momentary opportunity to say, this is what they do in other places when they can't appeal to the voters,
right.
they make it harder for the people who aren't with them to participate in the process.
Exactly. And I think it was a very resonant argument, and I think it got some people thinking. But I also think, you know, we're going to expect things like this to pop up throughout Governor Hogan's tenure, you know, things that Democrats hadn't really thought about.
With the latest poll showing him
He's
to be very popular.
Very popular.
Larry Hogan, a very popular governor in the state of Maryland. Center Maryland columnist Josh Kurtz, we are always delighted to have you here. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for
Great job
having me, Bruce.
We appreciate it. An update on the hour's top stories and the forecast. It's coming next. And then the promise and peril of drones.